You.
Thank you, Kobe. Tonight, our main speaker is Tom. Please help me welcome Tom.
How's everybody tonight? Good, good, good. My name is Tom. I'm an alcoholic. And my sobriety date is the 9th of December, 1983. And I have a sponsor, and I have a home group, and I work the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous on a daily basis. Every morning, I wake up with untreated alcoholism, and I need to treat my alcoholism. Because the treatment I gave my alcoholism yesterday that's not what's keeping me sober today. The treatment that I'm giving my alcoholism today is what's keeping me sober today. For me, this is a day at a time. You know, it's not about those years, because I never want to be a guy with too many years and not enough days. It's about the day that I'm in. You know, it took me a while to learn that. I was taught to tell my story, what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. Just to qualify some, I don't want to get into, I always say this, I don't want to get into long drunk-a-logs, but I have a tendency to have a hard time shutting up, okay? It's like, and in the first place, also, you should know that drugs and crime are a big part of my story. So, if you got a problem with drugs and crime, I'm sorry, but that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. I can't tell anybody else's story. I can only tell my own. Of course, tonight I might tell your story. You never know. I usually seem to tell somebody else's story all the time. I was born on the 15th of November, 1952. So I am a kid that grew up in the 50s and the 60s. And as far back as I can remember, way before I ever picked up a drink or a drug, I was always restless, irritable, and discontented. I never wanted to be who I was or where I was or doing what I was doing. I always wanted to be somebody else and be someplace else and doing something else. And I always felt different. I never felt that I fit in. I always felt alone. I always felt that I was unique, that there was something, I couldn't put my hand on it, but there was something that just was not right with me. I grew up in central Illinois in the cornfields, and in the 50s, there was a lot of UFO activity. You probably sat up late at night, and watched those old black and white movies with the flying saucers and stuff that we used to see as kids then. And I used to lay up in my bed and look out at the cornfield, and think that flying saucer is going to land out there. And they're going to come and pick me up and take me where I belong, because I didn't belong in this world. And the world they're going to take me to, I'll probably be the king there. That's what I should be. I should be the king. I felt that way until the first thing that changed me is that once I got to be about in the 5th grade, we moved into town. Up until then, I spent most of my life in the woods. I had a younger brother and a couple other kids, out in the country, but it was all hunting and fishing and country kid kind of stuff. And then I moved into town. And once I moved into town, my brother and I learned pretty quick that you better find some other guys to run with. Because I got tired of being put in a circle and knocked around, or held by a couple other guys and getting my ass whooped. And so we made up our minds, right away, that we belonged. We need to belong with somebody. So from the time I was in the 5th grade, way before I ever picked up a drink, I started to run with a gang. I was always a gang type guy. That's the kind of guy I was. Because you know what? When I got with those boys, for the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. And you know, I wasn't the best at sports, and I wasn't the best at schoolwork, and I couldn't be the best at being good. So I learned that I could be the best at being bad. And I set out to be the best at being bad. By the time I got to be about 13, you know, we used to steal everything. That's what we did. I was one of those little black leather jacket, grease back hair, switchblade carrying guys. You know, we used to do a lot of vandalism. We used to have all our little rumbles and everything with other gangs. We used to make brass knuckles out of muffler clamps. You know, those are the kinds of things that we did. And, you know, we stole. You know, we stole for fun. We stole just to dare each other into stealing. We used to steal right out from underneath the clerk's nose, go outside and look at what we all had, and then see who had the balls to take it back and put it back. Just to see who had the balls to do it. And when I got to be around 13, I found a bottle of wine in the woods that some other kid had stole and stashed there. It was the middle of the winter time, and it was real cold outside. You know, Illinois, you can get 10, 15, 20 below zero. And the wine had started to freeze. There was ice chips in the wine. And I remember thinking to myself, one of those big bottles, what we call Dago Red, you know, is a Chianti, you know, the straw glass bottle. And the thought that went through my mind is, I better drink this because the kid who stole it is probably going to come looking for it, so I better hurry up and drink it. And I started chugging that wine down, and I can still remember the ice chips melting in my throat as they went down. And I sucked that whole bottle of wine down, and I got drunker than hell. And I puked all over myself, and I passed out in the weeds. And that's pretty much my drunk-a-log, because that's the way I drank from then on. I always drank to get drunk. I never had a drink in my life without getting drunk. I didn't drink to be sociable. I don't understand what it is to be a sociable drinker. I don't understand that. See, I don't have a concept of that. I've seen other people, you know, when I was in my 20s, I lived with a woman who was president of the Bartenders Union. She had the best hotel in town, the bar in there. And on Saturday night, she got off, you know, because she was president of the union. And we used to go to the bar. She'd go to the bar with me. I used to go to the bar every night. But she'd go out to the bar with me on Saturday night, and she liked to drink schnapps on the rocks in a jigger glass, you know. And the ice used to melt in her glass. I never had a drink in my life that the ice melted in my glass. I don't think I ever had a soft drink that the ice melted in my glass, okay? I don't drink like that. You know, and I like to drink beer and whiskey. And after standing there at the bar, you know, 2 and 3 deep on a Saturday night, talking with the guys, her talking with the girls, why, I'd maybe had, after a couple hours, 15 shots and beers. And she liked to drink that schnapps, a peppermint schnapps, and I'd look at her glass and the melted ice in it. She'd be nursing her third one in 2 hours. And I'd say, well, honey, you want another drink? And she'd say, oh, no, I'm starting to feel it. And I used to think, what is wrong with this woman? Well, you know, what is she, a prude or something? Doesn't she know how to have a good time? You know, because, you see, when I start to feel it, that's not when it's time to say, oh, I'm feeling it. I don't want any more. When I start to feel it, that's when I say, when my mind says to me, it's time to have more. Not to not have less, but to put the pedal to the metal. Let's get with it. The party's going, you know. Let's get started here. Bartenders used to say, I never seen anybody could put booze away as fast as him. Because, you see, I wanted to get drunk right now. I wanted to get high right now, as fast as possible. And that's the way I drank. I drank to get drunk. You know, and my buddies, we all drank that way. And we started to steal liquor. And that's how we stayed drunk, was by stealing liquor. When the beer man would take the beer down into the basement of the bars to store it and put the padlock on his truck, we'd take a 2-pound hammer, knock the padlock off, and start robbing all his beer. We'd rob the boxcars down at the Pabst Brewery and take away cases and cases and cases of beer. We had the parties. We were the guys that everybody came to. You know, we had our fort built out in the woods, and that's what we did, you know. We didn't do book work. We didn't play sports. We got high. We partied. We were the party guys, you know. We always had plenty of girls with us who wanted to do the same thing. But, you know, something started to happen in the mid-'60s. People started to get turned on to drugs, you know, and my buddies all started to get turned on to drugs. And my buddies came to me, you know, and they says, come on, you don't get high. I said, I don't want to get high. I heard if you start smoking that shit, you'll shoot dope. You'll become a heroin addict. And they said, oh, no, that's baloney. That's not going to happen just from smoking some weed, doing some acid, you know. Come on. And I go, no, this beer's good enough for me. You know, this whiskey's good enough for me. I don't want anything to do with any of those drugs. But then you see, it got to be was just me and one other guy that were doing that. You see, the first big thing that was important to me was being with those guys. And when I couldn't be with those guys, and I started looking around at how we were being ostracized because we were still sloppy, puking, falling down drunks, and they were hip, slick, and cool drug addicts and dope fiends, okay, and smoking pot, and the girls didn't want to hang with us. They wanted to hang with them. And I started saying, well, you know, I started feeling out of place. And so I went to my buddy and I says, okay, let's get high. And we rode all over town trying to find some weed. Couldn't find any weed. I was really bummed out, you know, after all this, you know. And he says, well, I got some mescaline. I said, well, give me that. So we tripped and then found some weed, smoked dope, and tripped all night. Now, what happened is, you know, before I was stealing booze. Now, I started stealing drugs. So we're breaking into the drug warehouse down on the Illinois River, the McKesson and Robbins drug warehouse. In those days, you know, this is 1968. In those days, they didn't lock stuff up. They used to just have it on the shelf, okay? And we'd go in there, sneak in the middle of the night, and we were taking bottles of 1,000 Tuinols, Seconols, Amatols, White Crosses, Black Beauties, Dexedrine. We were filling up a gunny sack full of that stuff. And all we wanted to do was trade it and sell it for weed and for acid. We weren't really interested in barbiturates or amphetamines. But, you know, my buddy told me, he said, you know, my brother just came back from Vietnam. He's on a Devil Dog Marine. He was in the Battle of Quezon San and stuff, man, and he come home with a big habit, big China white habit, and he's running Reds all day, drinking a case of beer and a bottle of Jack just to keep his habit down. And he'd love this stuff. So we went to him. And I watched him take the Tuinol, grain and a half Tuinol, and break it open, throw it in a spoon. In those days, before the drug companies got wise to it and putting gelling elements in it so you couldn't do that, it was called cold shaking. We'd just stir it up in cold water in the spoon, throw your little cotton in there and drag it up and bang it. And I saw how fast he got fucked up. And he said, you want to try this? And I said, hell yeah. Hell yeah, I want to try that. And then I sat around for a year shooting dope with him, robbing places, and listening to him telling me about what a wonderful life it was in Vietnam in the Marine Corps. So as soon as I turned 18, I joined the Army. Not because I was a patriot, but because I was a dope fiend. Because I wanted to have that lifestyle. I wanted to be that guy doing that. Of course, the Army, is not real good about giving you what you want. So I got sent to Germany, but I found what I wanted. If anybody's ever seen the movie Buffalo Soldiers, you know what I'm talking about. Because that's how I was, and I knew what they had and what they didn't have. And I took what they didn't have. And because I had what they didn't have, I got right into a gang. And I got in that gang, the gang ran all of the hash in Schweinfurt, Germany. The guys were lifers who were once juicers that became dopers, and now, they were running all the hash and all the crystal, because that's what they had, crystal and hash. And I brought the mescaline. And then I found the morphine, raw morphine that all the guest workers, the gastarbeiters from Pakistan and Afghanistan who came to Germany used to bring the opium, and the Germans could buy whatever they wanted in the pharmacy, and they'd cook raw morphine, raw brown morphine up on the stove, and fill a medicine bottle and put the cork on it. Easiest thing in the world. All you had to do was pull the cork out and stick your spike in there and suck some up. I turned all of them into heroin addicts so that they'd start selling the morphine and the heroin, and I could stay high. And they constantly tried to put us in prison all the time because we ran all the drugs. And that's the crime that I was always in. I was always in the drug business. I was a dealer for years. And the Army, they started to get tired of us. The Vietnam War was coming to an end. They said, we want to bring in a volunteer army and get rid of all these dope fiends and all these juicers. And they started throwing us out. I came back on an airplane with 150 other junkies. I had hepatitis. Because when they came to get me, I used to work the East German, West German border. I was in the 7th Cavalry. They came to get me off the border, and I thought they were wanting to shake me down again because they were always shaking me down. They wanted to put me in Mannheim, give me a bad conduct discharge. They didn't want to give me a general under honorable for being a heroin addict. So I threw my works in the bushes. And I got back to Schweinfurt from the border, and everybody was up on the border, and I didn't have any works. I had dope, but I didn't have any works. And a guy come in there, another junkie that I knew, and I said, you got works, I got dope? And he says, yeah, but they're the works I was using with hep in the hospital. I said, that's okay, we'll just wash it out. We'll wash them out with some alcohol. It'll be fine. You see, in them days, we didn't know that you couldn't wash somebody out. We didn't know that it stayed in you, even after you were well. We thought when you were well, you were well. No, they call it Hep C now. We called it serum hepatitis in those days. 3 days later, my skin turned yellow, my shit turned white, and I came down with hep. 45 years now, it's still in my liver, still there. Keep an eye on it all the time. It hasn't become active. Probably lucky I've been sober for 34 years. Okay? Or my liver would have been gone a long time ago. So when I came back, they brought me to the VA hospital in Miami, Florida, because my people were construction workers, and they'd gone from Illinois to Florida when I was overseas, and so that's where they put me out. They put me out in the VA hospital downtown Miami. They offered me treatment, but I didn't want anything to do with their treatment. I've been locked up in old Nazi hospitals in Germany and shit for 3 months, getting rid of hep and going through detox and everything else. All I wanted was to get back out on the street. And they told me, they said, don't drink. Don't drink because your liver's been damaged. And I come out of that VA hospital in Miami, I had a duffel bag full of uniforms, and I threw them in the dumpster. I said, I'll never cut my hair or shave again. I'm through with this crap. And I went to the cab driver, and I said, take me to Pompano Beach. And he said, you mean Pompano Beach? And I said, I don't know what the hell I mean. I've never been to Florida before. He took me up to Pompano Beach, and my old man says they're building a water plant down the street. You can get a job down there. I ain't got a job for you on my job. And I went to work, and I was trying not to drink, but that's hard for a construction worker, because you see, the construction worker, all day on the job you're talking about what happened in the bar last night. And all night in the bar you're talking about what happened on the job all day. So, I didn't have nothing to talk about, and I was getting lonely. And I didn't have any friends. And what was I doing? Just working my ass off all day and then going home, sitting there and watching Lawrence Welk with the old man. I'm getting kind of tired of that crap, So, I start drinking. I says, I ain't going back to shooting dope. I'm clean from that, and I'm not going back to shooting dope. I start drinking, smoking a little pot. One night, I'm with another veteran. We're out at the VFW in Plantation, Florida. And we get into a fight with each other. We both got our own bottles of vodka. And that's usually what happens when you drank with me. If you didn't fight somebody else, you'd end up fighting me. And the last I remember, I went in a blackout, because I was always a terrible blackout drinker. I had blackouts from the first time I started drinking. And when I came out of the blackout, I was in a hospital, laying on a gurney, and my nose and face was killing me, and I got up, my clothes were on the chair, they had the gown on me. And the only thought that went through my mind was, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of this place, And I put my clothes on, and I was trying to get out, and the nurse got me, and she says, where are you going? I said, I'm leaving. I haven't got any money to pay you guys or anything. And she said, oh, well, you can't go anywhere. I said, why? She said, why? Did you ever get that look from people when you say something to them like that and they can't understand? Why would you say why? You mean you don't know? Know what? You don't know that you hit a carload of people? I said, I ain't even got a car. They said, well, you were driving your buddy's pickup. And he went through the windshield and lost his whole right eyebrow right down to the bone. We sewed him up and we sent him home. And you broke the steering wheel with your face. That's what happened to you. And the state police are out here, they want to see you, because you mess those people up bad. And there's 3 little kids in the car that are going to have plastic surgery because of you. Now let me tell you something. Up until that time, I never felt no remorse in my life. You understand? I never felt any remorse over any of the things that I had ever done. Because the things that I did to other people that were like me, they had it coming. They were in the same shit that I was in. I didn't feel bad about hurting you or doing things to you, because you do those things to me. But I felt bad about those 3 little kids. For the first time, I had remorse. That's what it's called, remorse. I was going to school on the GI Bill, just to get a few $100 every month to stay drunk and high on, because there wasn't any construction jobs. And I was going to school with this Korean War veteran who used to sit next to me. He looked at my face on Monday morning, and he wanted to know what happened to me, and I told him. And he asked me if I wanted to go have coffee with him after school, and I didn't have any money. He was buying, so I went. And he started talking to me about alcoholism. Nobody had ever talked to me about alcoholism before. Oh, they'd talk to me about my drug addiction and shit. They'd try to get me to get treatment, when I left the VA. But nobody had ever talked to me about the disease of alcoholism, and he never told me that he was a member of this fellowship and that he was an alcoholic. Later on, I found that out. He became my first sponsor. That was in 1973. I was 21 years old. And riding home on the bus, that evening after talking to him, I started thinking to myself, about my life. I had all this remorse, and I started thinking about my life, and I started wondering, why my life was such a mess. Why was my life like this? And I got this little whisper inside my head that wasn't my voice, it wasn't my thinking. It said, "You're an alcoholic like that man's talking about." And I said, "That's right. That's what I am. I'm an alcoholic." And I went home, and I got that phone book out. I opened the phone book, and AA was real easy to find, right there, AA. First page in the phone book, intergroup. And I called them. And they said there was a meeting right down the street from my house that night. And I went down to that meeting, and I wasn't too happy about being there because it was in a Catholic church, and I was raised Irish Catholic, The nuns started on me when I was in the second grade, beating me, and by the time I got to the Christian Brothers when I was in high school, they were using their knuckles on you. And I was always in some shit all the time, so I was always taking a beating. And I hated the clergy. I hated the church. And I stood in the bushes with hair down to my shoulders and a beard down to my chest, and I watched all these nice, middle-aged, well-dressed people going in the back door of that church and said to myself, what in the fuck am I doing here? These people don't look nothing like me. And the greeter saw me. See, the greeter, that's one of the best jobs you can have, is the greeter. And the greeter knew that I was fresh meat. He'd never seen me before. There I am lurking around over there by the bushes. And he went and got me. And he brought me in there. He brought me in there and he sat me down. He introduced me to all these nice, middle-aged, well-dressed people, and they started paying attention to me. And I liked that. I liked that they paid attention to me because, I was not the kind of person that people, were too nice with because I was not nice. I was the kind of guy that if you brought me to the bar where you drank, your bartender would tell you, don't bother coming back if you're going to bring that son of a bitch. Because I was a loud-mouthed, arrogant, aggressive alcoholic, 5'7", you put some whiskey in me, and right away I turned into 7'5". And I start talking shit. And you don't know what I'm going to get you into, plus me too. But it ain't going to be nice. But these people were nice to me. They were nice to me, and I started thinking. You see, I'm a great thinker. I'm a wonderful thinker. I am so good at thinking about shit. And I started thinking, I'm in trouble. I got a court date. And I don't need to be hanging around out there on the street drinking and getting in more shit. And so it'd probably put me in good stead if I hung around with these old bastards and listened to their shit and put up with their shit and wait until I got in front of the judge. And that's what I did. I looked up there at the wall at those steps and it says powerless over alcohol. I said, okay, all right. I got a problem with alcohol. Got a problem with shooting dope. If I don't drink and I don't shoot any dope, I don't have any problem. Because that's what got me in trouble. There was no Narcotics Anonymous in those days. It was only AA. And for the benefit of the dope fiends in the room in AA, the old-time AAers used to say, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we don't drink and we don't take any mind or mood-altering drugs. And I could hardly wait for the meeting to get over so I could get out my car, reach underneath the seat, pull my bag of weed out, and start to roll me up a big fat one, token on it, and tell myself, this doesn't alter my mind or my mood, it enhances it. This is mind and mood enhancing drug. Of course, I never brought that up as a topic of discussion or had a sponsor to run that by because I ran my life. Them people weren't going to tell me how to run my life. I know what I'm doing. And I got in front of that judge, and that judge, he asked me the $64,000 question. He says, "What's your problem, son?" Well, I knew what to tell him. They taught me that by hanging around AA. Because, you know, they wanted me to say, "I'm Tom and I'm an alcoholic." And that's fine. I'll tell you, if that's what you want me to say, I got no problem with saying that. As long as you'll leave me alone and let me do what I want, I'll tell you all day long I'm Tom and I'm an alcoholic. And I'll pretend to be whatever you want me to be so I can use you. Because you see, that's who I really am. Who I really am is a user and abuser of drugs and alcohol and people, places, and things. And I'm using those good people in AA. So when that judge asked me, "What's your problem?" I knew exactly what to tell him. I said, "Well, Your Honor, my problem is I'm an alcoholic. But I'm going to those meetings and I'm going to do the right thing. I'll sign anything you want me to have signed. Let me go to the meetings. Please don't put me in jail. Please give me a break." You know, that judge did the worst thing he could have done for me. He gave me that break. See, the problem is I ain't the kind of guy you can give a break to. You can't give a break to a guy like me. Because I'm a user and an abuser. Because I'm a liar, a cheat, and a thief. Because I ain't about this. I'm about doing what I want to do. Getting what I want to get. And by him giving me that break, I spent the next 10 years going in and out of AA. Because, you see, I learned the first time it got me out of trouble. See, every time I got in a jackpot, I'd run right back to Alcoholics Anonymous and tell all the people in there whatever they wanted to hear, just so I could get my shit back. Because that's all I was doing here. All I was doing here was taking up a seat to get my shit back, to get my license back, to get a car back, to get a job back, to get a girlfriend back, to get some money back, to get a place to live back, to get the judge off my back, to get my folks off my back, using them to get what I wanted. And once when I got what I wanted and I got my shit back, I went right back. But you know, alcoholism has a trick for you. If you don't die from it. Because people die from alcoholism every day. People are dying from alcoholism all around us. And if you don't die from alcoholism, you will eventually get sober because of progression. The progression of my alcoholism took me to the place where I no longer could stop anymore after 10 years of going in and out of here. Didn't matter that people tried to kill me. Didn't matter that I'm in jail all the time now. Didn't make any difference. None of that made any difference. I couldn't stop. I used to go into meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, and I used to sit there and I'd tell those people, I'd be so scared. I'd be so scared, I'd be scared to leave my house because I wouldn't know what I was going to do. My great idea to control blackouts had become just keep shooting cocaine. You drink all you want if you got enough cocaine to shoot. Just drink and shoot as much cocaine as you can. You won't go in a blackout. That was my great idea. But you know, that's like a dam. And that dam breaks once it gets enough booze behind it. And you'd pass out right on the street, anywhere. Or in a dope house. Where one night they put a block in my head. A whole block. And if I hadn't woke up right when the block was coming at my head and throwing my arm up, I wouldn't be standing up here talking to you right now. Because they were looking to kill me. And I didn't even have a fucking dime on me. I walk out of that AA meeting and walk right down the street and tell myself I'm just going in here to have a Coke and listen to the music because I'm lonely. And I don't want to hang around with those assholes in AA telling me how to run my life. I'd sit down there at the bar, you know, and be looking at myself in the mirror telling myself, I'm just going to drink for an hour maybe. I'll just keep my eye on that clock. I won't take my eye off of it. I don't care if a pretty girl comes and sits next to me. I won't even talk to her. I'll watch the clock. And I'll make myself drink for an hour, and I'll get up from this bar, and I'll leave here, and I won't come out of a blackout in a jail cell or in the weeds, and it's going to be different this time. You know how fucking crazy that is? You know how many years I was telling myself that same bullshit? And that's exactly where I wound up. Now I'm sitting in a jail cell. Sitting there, sobered up, in a jail cell again, thinking, what is my problem? Why can't I fix my life? Why can't things be different for me? Why does it have to be like this all the time? And that little whisper came back. And it said, you know what your problem is, Tom? Your problem is you're crazy. And the reason you're crazy is because you think you know how to run your life. But you can't. But you believe that you can. And that's why you're insane. And I said, yep, that's the truth. That's the truth about me. The truth about me is not only am I powerless over alcohol, but that my life is unmanageable, which means my thinking doesn't work. My way doesn't work. See, I got a disease called alcoholism. It's a disease that centers in my mind. And it's a talking disease. It talks to me. You know what it tells me? It tells me, you know how to run your life. You know how to run your life, and you know how to run everybody else's life. And you know the way that life ought to run. And if life would just run your way, everything would be wonderful. See, I'm that guy in the big book who thinks that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness from this life if I just manage well. That if I could just get my way, I'd be happy. Everything would be wonderful. See, I had to surrender. I had to take the first step 100%. I don't suggest anybody go through what I went through to take that way. You don't have to do that. You can stop right now. My old mentor from Chicago, and in the old days, you know, he'd say, where's Skid Row at? I'd say it's down by Union Station. When you came out of Union Station, you'd see the guys sitting on the curb and shit. In the old days, getting a quarter drink, drinking wine. He said, where the L train start at? I said, up in Oak Park. That's a nice neighborhood, isn't it? I said, yeah. He says, well, alcoholism's just like that L train. You want to ride on it, you go through worse and worse and worse neighborhoods until the end of the line at Union Station, where Skid Row is. You can get off that train anytime you're ready. You don't have to wait till the end of the line. 34 years, my life is still unmanageable. But it's not unmanaged. It's managed by a power greater than me through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. None of that I ever wanted. I never wanted Alcoholics Anonymous to be about changing my character. But that's what I had to do. I had to change the guy that brought me in here. Because if I hadn't changed the guy that brought me in here, he was the same guy that kept taking me back out there. And I had a big problem with God. And I couldn't stop drinking. And I went back to that BA. And I begged them to take me in. They took me in, they put me on anti-abuse, and they kept me in there for 2 months. And when I came out of there, I went to go back to my old home group in Delray Beach, Florida, and as I went, it was in the American Legion, the Central House in Delray Beach. When I went to walk through the door, this old man stepped in my way, wouldn't let me pass. And he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to the meeting." He said, "You don't want to get sober." I said, "The hell I don't. I've been sober for 2 months." He said, "Yeah, on animal abuse up at the VA, I heard. That's easy. What are you going to do now?" I said, "What do you want me to do?" He said, "Hell, all I want you to do is what I've been trying to tell you for years to do." And I'm thinking to myself, who is this guy? Who is he? What's he talking about, standing in my way? I said, "What's that?" He said, "Get on your knees and ask God for the strength to stay clean and sober." And I looked at him and I said, "I don't see how that's going to do any good." You imagine how defiant I am? After all I've been through, to stand there and tell that man, I don't see how that's going to do any good. And he looked at me and he said, "How's your way been working, wise guy? How's your way been working for you?" And you know what? I couldn't even say, I guess you're right. I says, "I guess you're right. I guess you're right," I says. "My way ain't been working." And then he told me the best thing that anybody in AA ever said to me. He said, "Then I guess what you believe in doesn't work then, does it?" You see, this isn't about what you're going to believe in. This is about what are you willing to do. Because if you ain't going to do nothing until you believe in it, you ain't never going to do it. You know what he said? He said, "You don't have to believe. I'm not asking you to believe. I'm just asking you to do it and try and be sincere." Can you do that? Can you get on your knees in the morning and ask God for the strength to stay clean and sober? And try and be sincere? Try to stop lying, cheating, and stealing. Get a sponsor. Start reading a book. Go to meetings. Get a job. Get a shave and a haircut. Get some clean clothes. And start behaving yourself. Can you do that? I says, "Yeah, okay, I can do that." I lived with the obsession to drink and to use for months. Then one day, I was working underneath a building, digging ditches for the plumbers. And I came out from underneath that building at lunchtime, to go down the street and to get me a sandwich in the 7-Eleven. And when I walked out of the 7-Eleven, there was a car sitting there with 2 other construction workers sitting in it, and they had quarts of beer between their legs and a Frisbee turned up cleaning seeds out of their weed, rolling joints. And my eyes glued on that shit, because I was that guy for years with the quart of beer and the weed at lunchtime. I started walking down the street, and I started thinking to myself, those guys are getting high. They're getting high. I climbed up in underneath that building. I sat in the side of that ditch eating my sandwich, and a thought came to me. I haven't thought about getting high. I can't remember when the last time was that I thought about getting high. And I started to cry. Big crocodile tears and chills all over my body. What I had been thinking about day in and day out since I was 13 years old when I first found that bottle of wine in the woods. All the years in and out of AA was gone. And I knew that because I'd done something I didn't believe in, my God loved me. And it took that from me. And it showed me just how powerful he really was, because I didn't even miss it. I came to believe. You know what? This morning, if you were in my bedroom, you'd see me on my knees, asking my God for the strength to stay clean and sober. God bless you.
Thank you, Tom.